Welcome to Cheat Sheet Tales, where secrets slip, lies unravel, and the truth always has a twist. Real stories, raw confessions, shocking betrayals. Drop a comment if you've ever caught a red flag too late. Now let's get into today's tale. Let my wife's parents add an extension to our house so they'd have a little space. When I asked why they'd added a lock to the inside door, her father said, "Sometimes family needs distance." My wife said, "Don't make this a thing." That night, I walked into the new room and found a folder labeled with my name. I'm Mark, and this all happened last year. We live in a small town outside Columbus, Ohio. Nothing fancy, just a normal working-class neighborhood where people mind their own business. I've been married to Marissa for 8 years. I thought we had a solid marriage, but I guess I was blind. Marissa's parents, Ronald and Elaine, had always been around, but last year they told us they wanted to sell their house and simplify. They said they didn't need the space anymore, and they offered to pay for an extension on our house. They made it sound like a gift, a little space for them to stay in when they visited. Marissa was all for it. She said it would be good for family, and she got emotional talking about how they were getting older and how she wanted them close. I wasn't sure. I mean, it was our house. We'd been doing fine on our own, but I caved because I wanted to make her happy. The extension went up fast. Ronald was always here supervising the contractors like he owned the place. They added a bedroom, a bathroom, and even a kitchenette. It wasn't just a little space. It was basically a full apartment, attached to our house, and then I noticed the lock. The door that connected the extension to our home had a lock on their side. I asked Ronald about it. I tried to keep it light. I said, "Hey, why the lock? It's not like we're strangers here." He just looked at me and said, "Sometimes family needs distance." Then he walked off like it was nothing. I asked Marissa. She got annoyed, said, "Don't make this a thing, Mark. They just want a little privacy." Something about it didn't sit right with me, but I let it go. I didn't want to be the paranoid husband causing drama. That was my mistake. A few nights later, Marissa went out to dinner with friends. Ronald and Elaine said they were visiting friends in another town. The house was quiet, and I decided to take a look around the extension. The lock wasn't engaged, and curiosity got the best of me. When I stepped into their space, it felt off. It was too perfect, too clean. It wasn't just a guest room, it felt like a home. There was a desk, and on the desk, a folder. The folder had my name written on the tab. I opened it and my heart dropped. Inside were documents, copies of our mortgage, papers, my pay stubs, my retirement account information, credit card statements, and even notes about my daily routine. There was a draft of a quick claim deed that would transfer the house entirely to Marissa's name. And then, tucked in the back, a note in Ronald's handwriting. "Mark is financially reckless. Need to protect Marissa's future. Push for deed transfer by fall." I felt sick. I sat there for a while staring at the papers, trying to make sense of it. Why would they need all this? Why were they planning to take the house? And why was Marissa going along with it? When Marissa got home, I confronted her. I didn't yell. I just asked what was going on. She got defensive fast. "Why were you snooping around in their space?" she snapped. When I showed her the folder, she tried to play it off. "It's not what you think. My parents are just trying to help us get organized. They're just looking out for me." I asked her, "Looking out for you by stealing my house?" She called me paranoid, said I was making a big deal out of nothing, that it wasn't a big deal, but I could see it in her eyes. She knew. She knew what they were doing. After that, things got tense. Marissa started being cold to me. Her parents started acting like they owned the place. They'd lock the door to the extension every night, but I could hear them moving around, whispering like they were plotting something. I started watching them. I set up a camera in the hallway, and what I saw made me sick. Late at night, Ronald and Elaine would sneak into our side of the house. They'd go through the mail, open drawers, even rifle through my files in the office. They were gathering information on me. I also found emails on Marissa's laptop. They were all about me. How I was unreliable, how I was risky with money, how they had to make sure Marissa was protected. They were making a case to take the house, to cut me out completely. I realized I couldn't trust any of them. Not Marissa, not her parents. They were planning to push me out of my own home, so I started planning. I went to a lawyer. I told him everything. I showed him the folder, the emails, the footage. He told me I had a case for fraud, even possibly for harassment. He said if I signed the quitclaim deed they were preparing, I'd lose everything. I also quietly changed the locks on the main house and the extension. I told Marissa it was for security, but I didn't give her the new keys for the extension. I also moved important documents and valuables out of the house and into a safe deposit box. The tension in the house was unbearable. Ronald and Elaine were furious when they found they couldn't get into the main house anymore. Marissa was ice cold. Every day felt like walking on broken glass. But I wasn't done. I started gathering more. I pulled bank statements, tracked calls, took photos of every document I could find. And then I waited for the moment they'd make their move, and they did. One afternoon, I came home early and found Ronald in my office going through my desk drawers. He froze when he saw me. I told him to leave. He tried to play it off, saying he was just looking for a pin. That was the last straw. I called my lawyer. I called the police. I filed a report for trespassing and theft. I filed for divorce, and I kept every shred of evidence. After I called the cops on Ronald for going through my desk, everything in the house turned to ice. The police showed up that day. They didn't arrest him, but they took a report. Ronald tried to act calm, even smiled, and said it was all a misunderstanding. The officer didn't buy it. Not completely. They wrote it up as a trespassing incident and told me I had every right to ask him to leave. Ronald left that day with a smirk, like he wasn't worried. Marissa barely spoke a word. Later that night, Marissa and I sat down. I tried to lay it all out. What I'd found, what I knew they were doing. She didn't even deny it. She just stared at me, arms crossed, eyes cold. "You're making this into a war, Mark," she finally said. "No, Marissa," I said. "You and your parents already started a war. I'm just not letting you win it." After that, she basically stopped talking to me, unless it was absolutely necessary. Ronald and Elaine stayed in the extension all the time, hardly ever coming into the main house anymore. I heard them arguing, at night through the walls. I could make out bits and pieces, something about getting Mark out of the picture, protecting the family investment, and the paperwork needs to get signed. Soon, I started sleeping with the bedroom door locked. I didn't trust any of them anymore. 2 weeks later, I came home from work early again, and this time the extension door was wide open. I walked in, and there they were, all three of them, huddled around the kitchen table, papers everywhere. They didn't see me at first. I heard Ronald say, "We'll just tell him it's for estate planning. He won't understand the legal side of it. We can have him sign it and get it filed before he even knows what happened." Marissa nodded. "It's better this way. He's reckless. If he screws up, the house is protected. I'm not going to risk my future because of him." I stepped in. "What the hell are you talking about?" They all froze. Marissa tried to recover, but the damage was done. "Mark, it's not like that," she said, her voice tight. "Don't you lie to me," I snapped. "You're trying to steal my house. You're trying to cut me out of everything." Ronald stood up. "We're trying to protect Marissa. You've been careless with money for years. You spend too much. You take risks, and you don't think about the future. We're making sure she's safe." I laughed. It wasn't even a real laugh. It was one of those hollow, bitter sounds that comes out when you realize the people you trusted the most think you're a fool. "I built this life with Marissa," I said. "I paid for this house. I worked my ass off, and you're sitting here plotting how to cut me out like I'm just some tenant, like I'm disposable." Marissa wouldn't even look at me. That night, I packed a bag and left. I needed space, time to think. But before I left, I changed the Wi-Fi passwords, canceled the credit cards we shared, and froze the joint accounts. I stayed at a motel that night, staring at the ceiling, wondering how the hell my life had gotten so twisted. The next day, I went back to the lawyer. I gave him everything, Every shred of evidence, the folder, the security footage, my notes on the conversations I'd overheard. He told me I had a strong case for divorce. Strong enough to keep the house, strong enough to keep my assets safe, strong enough to prove Marissa and her parents had been conspiring against me. But I wasn't done yet. I wanted them to feel what I felt. So I set a trap. I told Marissa I was coming back home to talk. I told her I was ready to sign the papers. I acted like I'd given up, like I was beaten. When I got there, Ronald had this smug look like he'd won. They sat me down, laid out the new draft of the quitclaim deed, and Marissa handed me a pen. I just sat there looking at it, while my phone, recording the whole thing, was hidden in my jacket pocket. Ronald actually had the nerve to say, "This is for your own good, Mark. We're protecting Marissa's interests. Just sign it." I looked at him and smiled. "You know what?" I said. "I think you just gave me everything I need." Then I stood up and left. The look on their faces, I'll never forget it. They knew. They knew they'd screwed up, and I wasn't done. Yet. The next few days were a blur. I didn't go back to the house. I stayed in the motel, pacing, planning. I kept replaying the scene in my head. Ronald's smug face, Marissa's cold stare, Elaine sitting there pretending like none of this was a big deal. I sent everything to my lawyer. The recording of them pushing me to sign the deed, the emails, the footage of Ronald going through my stuff, the whole twisted plot laid bare. The lawyer told me, "This is bigger than just divorce, Mark. They're trying to defraud you. This could be criminal." That's when I knew I had to go all in. I filed for divorce, citing fraud, emotional abuse, and conspiracy to defraud marital property. I filed for a restraining order against Ronald and Elaine. I filed a civil suit for damages too. Then I called the county recorder's office and put a temporary hold on any property changes related to the house. I made sure nothing was going to happen without my signature. The day they were served, Marissa blew up my phone. Calls, texts, voicemails. She was screaming, cursing, begging me to talk and be reasonable. I didn't answer. A single one. 2 days later, she showed up at the motel. I was half tempted to let her talk, but I stayed behind the locked door. I watched her through the peephole, pacing, knocking, crying. Then she left, and I could breathe again. That night, I went back to the house. I knew they'd all be gone. They had been served, and the papers made it very clear they had no legal right to enter the main house anymore. I walked into the extension and saw it stripped bare. Ronald and Elaine had cleared out everything, furniture, personal items, even the damn silverware from their kitchenette. They were gone. I went into the main house and just stood there. It felt empty. The air was heavy, like all the tension was still hanging in the walls. I walked through the house slowly, checking every drawer, every cabinet. That's when I found something they must have missed, a small flash drive. It was in the back of a drawer in Ronald's desk in the extension. Plugged it into my laptop and sat there in shock. It was a recording, a conversation between Ronald and Marissa. They didn't know it had been saved. I could hear them clear as day, sitting in the extension plotting. "Ronald, once we get the deed signed, we'll file it fast. Mark won't even know until it's too late. Marissa, he'll be pissed, but it's for the best. He's a liability. Ronald, after that, we sell the house, split the money. You can get something smaller, safer." Marissa, "Yeah, I'm tired of feeling trapped with him. They were going to sell my house, my home, the place I'd worked for, paid for, fixed up, and they were going to dump me like trash." I forwarded that recording to my lawyer that night, but it didn't stop there. A week later, Marissa tried to file an emergency motion in court to force me to sign the quitclaim deed. She said I was endangering her stability. I showed up in court with my lawyer, the flash drive in my hand. We played the recording for the judge, the look on Marissa's face when the judge asked her to explain her liability comment. Priceless. The judge denied her motion hard and issued a restraining order against her this time. That was the day it finally hit her. I wasn't going down easy, but I wasn't done yet. I knew Ronald and Elaine were hurting financially. Ronald had taken out a personal loan against their old house before they sold it, and they were counting on a chunk of our house's equity to bail them out. So I dug. I found their loan records, their tax filings, even some shady investments Ronald had been hiding. My lawyer helped me file a report with the IRS for suspected tax fraud, reported Ronald's sneaky business dealings to the state's licensing board. He was an insurance broker, and what he'd been doing wasn't legal. Within a month, Ronald lost his professional license. The IRS launched an audit. They were bleeding money, fast. Marissa tried to call me again, left a voicemail crying, begging me to stop, saying I was ruining lives. I just sat there and listened to it. I thought about all the nights I lay awake in my own house, wondering if I was paranoid. All the times I thought maybe I was overreacting, the lies, the betrayal. No, they did this to themselves, and I wasn't done yet. It all came crashing down fast after that. Ronald lost his license for good. He was banned from working in the insurance industry thanks to the complaint and the financial records I handed over. The IRS hit him with a massive fine for unpaid taxes and misreported income. He tried to fight it, but when they started digging into the sale of their old house and his retirement plan, they found even more dirt. Elaine's name was on some of the financial mess too, so they both got dragged into an audit that drained them. Their retirement fund gone. The savings they were counting on seized to cover penalties. Marissa, she was drowning too. When the divorce settlement finally wrapped up, the judge ruled in my favor. I kept the house completely. The extension, the main house, everything. The judge cited the evidence of fraud, the coercion, the recordings, the emails, every dirty trick they tried to pull. Marissa got nothing. No share of the property, no spousal support, no money from the equity, just her clothes and personal items. She tried to fight it, sobbing in court, telling the judge she didn't know what her parents were doing, that she was manipulated. But the judge wasn't buying it. Neither was I. I watched her walk out of that courtroom, her face pale, eyes red, hands shaking. That was the last time I saw her in person. A few weeks later, I heard from a mutual friend that she'd moved into a cheap apartment on the other side of town alone. No Ronald, no Elaine. They had skipped town after the audit wrecked them, trying to start over somewhere else, but karma wasn't done with them yet. A year later, I got a letter from Ronald, sent from a federal prison. He was serving time for wire fraud. Turns out the IRS investigation had uncovered more than just the tax issues. He'd been running a side hustle, selling fraudulent insurance policies to seniors, pocketing premiums and never filing the paperwork. Someone had blown the whistle, and he got caught up in a bigger case. Elaine, word was she divorced Ronald after he was arrested. She was working part-time at a grocery store in some small town, trying to stay under the radar. And Marissa, I heard she tried dating again but couldn't hold a relationship. People talk in small towns, word about what happened, how she and her parents tried to screw over her husband, how they got caught, spread. She had a reputation now. People didn't trust her. As for me, I kept the house. I remodeled the extension, ripped out the kitchenette, turned it into a home office, a gym, and a guest room. Every time I walk through that space, I remember what they tried to do, and I smile. I also started a side business, real estate. I took what I learned from that whole mess and made something good out of it. I've got 3 properties now and they're fully mine. But here's the real twist. One day I got a letter in the mail. It was from Marissa. She said she was sorry for everything, that she had learned a lot and hoped I was doing well. She wanted to meet for coffee just to catch up. I didn't respond. I took that letter, folded it up, and slid it into the back of the folder they left behind, the one labeled with my name. It's still in my desk, a reminder. I never threw it away because every time I think I'm slipping or I'm second-guessing myself, I pull it out. And I remember, they tried to take everything from me, but in the end, they lost it all. And I walked away with my life, my house, my future, because I didn't let them win. And I never will. Never will.